What's up, guys? And ladies. And welcome back to another episode of Punker Mike's Custom Action Figures Showcase. In this episode, I'm going to be showcasing my custom biker clown gang leader Joker from Akira. Kick it! Alright, so kicking it off. If you guys aren't familiar with this character, he's the leader of a biker gang called the Clowns in Katsuhiro Otomo's masterpiece, Akira. Now, Akira is probably my favorite anime movie. I love the story. The overall visuals are amazing. Even if you're not a fan of anime, I'd highly recommend watching it. I think you can even watch the English dub in its entirety on YouTube. Just type in Akira movie and it should be one of the first ones that pop up. But highly recommend watching the movie. If you can get a hold of the manga, I definitely recommend reading the manga. I haven't read the manga in its entirety, but what I have read, I love it, and I love Katsuhiro Otomo's artwork. So basically, this figure is made up of two different figures. I used a WWE Elite Yokozuna, and I used a Soda Street Fighter Balrog. Punker Mike, did you just say you destroyed a Soda Street Fighter figure for a custom? You damn right I did. So for the head, I kept the Yokozuna head, but I dremeled and cut the face out, and then I got the Balrog head, and I cut his face off, and then I Frankensteined it in there. So I super glued it in the void, filled it with sculpt, and sanded it. And then the Yokozuna hair, I sanded it so he has a bald head. So it looks like the head's just about ready for prime. So I glued that face in there. I filled the gaps with sculpt. I used super glue to secure it. Like I said, filled the gaps with sculpt, sanded it down. Now I'm going to use some of this primer right here and prime it, and then make sure everything looks smooth. If it's not smooth, I'm going to have to go another round of the fine grit sandpaper. But yeah, let's check it out, all primed up. And then the head's looking pretty good. There was a couple spots that weren't 100% smooth, so I had to kind of sand it a little more. I might have to go over it one more time. And then forgot to put his mohawk on there, so I have to sculpt that little mohawk, a little bit of chin fuzz, but the head's looking pretty good. And I sculpted the mohawk and the goatee at a Procreate sculpt. So I did a little mohawk, so small little mohawk for dude, and then some chin pubes. So I think he's just about ready for the full prime, and then I can start painting. All right, so I got the flesh tone down. So this was a lighter skin tone before. I made it to a darker browner skin tone, and dude's face is all painted. Now I have to do the clown makeup. I painted his mohawk, his chin fuzz, his face. It looks cool like that, but I'm gonna paint the clown makeup next. And then the earrings are just from like a craft chain. Like you can find like a generic gold chain like at the craft store. I had just like a fodder one, and I ripped a couple links off. I poked a hole in his ears with a push pin, and then I stretched it out, and then I just fed those through and clamped them with needle nose pliers. So they're kind of articulated a little. And then I painted everything. Usually when I paint action figures and make customs, I'm always going to use Citadel paints for the most part. So everything's with Citadel paint. So the torso is the Yokozuna torso. I painted it the darker flesh tone, and I had to modify the sockets. So the upper torso part is similar to a Marvel Legends where you have to crack it, and it has the disc that you can't pull out unless you crack it. So I dremeled that out. I chopped up Balrog shoulder piece, and I fit it in that hole. I had to dremel it down to a really small piece, just like I did with my custom Splinter action figure. If you've watched that video, I did the same exact technique. So once I got his shoulder piece small enough, I put it in there, put a bunch of super glue gel, and then once that dried, I filled in the gaps with Milliput Sculpt, sanded it so it looked flush across, and then I was able to heat that up and pop the arms in, and I didn't have to do really much with the arms except do the clown's logo. Alright, so I made some progress on the torso. So I primed it and I glued the pieces back together. So I hollowed out the arm sockets. So where similar to like a Marvel Legend, where this piece would fit in there, I hollowed it all out so that way I can put my own socket piece in there. So this is going to be just like I did with the Splinter. So I'm going to glue that in there. Once it dries, I'm going to Dremel it down, fill the voids in with sculpt, like the crack right here too. Fill it all in with sculpt and sand that down and prep for painting. So I'm just waiting for the glue to dry a little bit more on this. So arm sockets are glued in. Just waiting for that glue to cure. And then I can kind of Dremel down the excess and then start filling it in with Sculpt. And then this is the kind of glue I always use. Loctite super glue, the gel. The gel is the shit. So I got the torso piece primed, and you can see that the shoulder pieces that I glued and put Sculpt in are looking pretty good. This one looks a little better than this one. You can see there's like a little piece I might have to sand right there. But filled in the seam for the most part. So this is ready to paint. And I'm just going to use the same flesh tone, try to match the flesh tone for the arm so I don't have to paint the arms because this is a good skin tone. So to get this arm in there, this is the peg part is hard plastic. This is soft rubber plastic. So I'm going to have to heat this up with a blow dryer and then pop that bad boy in. So what I did, with these cheapy brushes I have, I put a little bit of super glue on it, and then you have to do it quick though. And then I brushed it like a light coat, like a shell, to prevent paint rub. So I sanded it, I prepped it really good, but it still might rub a little on there. So what I did, I put a nice thin layer of super glue as like a shell, and then I clear coated the whole thing. I did the same thing on the neck because you see the head's going to touch it a little bit when he swivels around and everything. So then I did that, and that worked. That's usually something I do when I make props. Like I paint the handle of a katana or like the handle of a gun. Before I do the clear coat with those brush, I'll just put just a little bit of super glue on the brush, and then I'll brush it on there so it's a nice shell. And then for the straps, these are just elastic bands that I got at Michael's. You get a whole roll of it for like $2 at Michael's, and I colored like this rainbow / Rasta colors with Sharpie. So hopefully that'll hold up over time, and I kind of dirtied it up with powdered pigment. And then you can see I made a couple pins. So I made like a smiley face pin, and then, just some random pins. And what I did with those, I got some leftover Procreate Sculpt, and I rolled it up. And then once it dried, I got a razor blade, and I cut it into thin little discs, and then I painted them. And then you can see the suspenders in the back just cross over. These little metal things that I have on the front and back are just like scrap pieces. Like when you take apart a calculator or anything with usually like a lithium battery or something with like a little computer chip, sometimes they'll have like thin little plastic pieces to either hold the lithium battery, like the lithium battery housing, or just sometimes they have like little prongs, and I usually rip those off and keep them. So that's exactly what these are. And then I had to chop them down for size. This is actually pretty cheap. It was only like $2, and I get like a bunch of it. But these will be for his suspenders. I was trying to find different colors. But I'll probably just have to dye it or paint it. I'm not sure if I want to do purple or like rainbow, because in the manga, one of the times he has like rainbow suspenders, and I think in the anime he has purple suspenders. So the rainbows kind of seems cool. I'd have to probably do it with like Sharpie. I don't know. We'll see how it goes. So I just finished painting the buttons for his braces. And again, I had some extra Sculpt. This is Procreate. So I had some extra Sculpt. And so I rolled it like hot dog style. And then once it dried, I got a razor blade and I cut off thin little circles, thin as you can possibly get it, that are straight. Painted a couple different little buttons for him so I could put them on the braces. And now my biggest debate and kind of hurdle with this custom has been to go with the purple braces or the rainbow. Now the purple looks good contrast-wise with the figure because, he's got the dark skin tone, he's got the black shirt, so the braces kind of pop. Plus, he's got some purple on his arm with the clown logo. And the face paint is actually a very light purple. I actually got white Citadel paint and just added a dab of this purple in there so it's not white. You can kind of see how this thing looks a little dirty. It's not coming up in the camera too bad, but I got this powdered pigment, so I'm kind of dirtying them up a little bit so they're not as vibrant. But I think the rainbow, it's going to look the best. What my deciding factor is going to be is what the pins look best on. As long as the pins show up on these, I'm going to go with these. The purple will be the safe route. Color-wise, it works. But I don't know, I'm feeling the rainbow. I keep saying rainbow, but they're not necessarily rainbow. It's almost like Rasta colors too, because this is like an off bluish green. But I don't know, I'm going to keep saying rainbow. And this belt is just random fodder from a like McFarlane figure of some sort. I can't remember. And oh, I forgot to paint the belt buckle. And so my dude's got interchangeable hands. So these are actually Sagat's hands. So I had an extra Soda Street Fighter, another Soda Street Fighter figure that I annihilated. Now I had an extra Sagat that was broken. And so I used his hands, painted the fingers flesh tone, painted the nails, weathered them, and then I had to fill in some extra sculpt right here so it would go smooth across to the forearm. Because the Sagat ones go straight, so it's a lot smaller. So then I had to just, with some Procreate sculpt, actually got a little crafty, and I put saran wrap around his forearm, sculpted it, and I pushed it in so that way it's gonna fit pretty much flush. You can see it's pretty much flush. And then these, I just dremeled the Sagat peg down, where it's just a little peg. So it pops right in. Reworked Sagat's hands. So I was going to use the Balrog fists, and then the Sagat, the peg on this was actually a lot bigger. It was longer and fatter. So I just dremeled that down so it pops in there nice. And then you could see the wrist is a little smaller than where it meets the forearm. So I'm just going to have to add a little bit of sculpt just to fill that out. So it'll be like this. So I tried something a little different. I laid down some plastic wrap so that way the sculpt wouldn't stick to the actual like forearm piece right here. And then once it dries, I'm gonna probably have to just trim it or sand it down a little bit. And the kind of sculpt I use is Procreate, because when Procreate dries, it's kind of flexible to a point. Whereas Milliput is like, it turns into rock. So you're pretty much, this turns into rock, and then Procreate, depending on how you mix it, you can mix it where it's super flexible, you can mix it where it's hard, but it's still always going to have some bend to it. So I thought that would be the best for popping hands on and off. So he's going to be riding a motorcycle eventually, so I wanted to have open hands, or if he's grabbing somebody or fighting somebody. And my dude's got fist to hands. So these are just the stock Balrog wrapped up fists. Now, he wears gloves like in the movie. Let's see if I match the nails. See, I matched the nails pretty good, right? Nice, because these are stock. I didn't paint them or nothing. And I just realized this right now, too. If he has one open hand and one closed hand, the gloves aren't going to match. So for the shirt, it's actually a book cover, like those elastic, stretchy book covers. I found a stack of them at the thrift store, different colors, and so I used the black one. So that way it's going to still stretch. So I got my dude's arms on there with this little Clown Gang insignia painted on his arms. And so I'm going to start gluing this shirt down. So this is a fabric shirt. I was going to sew it, but I think I'm going to glue it down so that way it doesn't move. Again, I'm going to use this kind of brush, like these cheapy brushes. Put a little super glue. I'm going to put super glue, brush it, and then lay it on there. And I already did some test runs, and it works pretty good. It doesn't seep through. So, it's going to be tricky, and I'm nervous, but it's going to look good if I do it right. Alright, so it worked pretty good. See the shirt's on there. Nice and tight. I tucked the seam into the waist. He still has his articulation. He could rock back and forth. And then the waist still swivels. It's kind of hard to do it one-handed. Now the pants were something that I've never tried before. And I haven't really seen anybody try it, at least to this scale, before. So you can see my goons right here. They're made out of 3A figures. We got the guy in the back right there. Guy in the back right there. So I kind of wanted him to have like a 3A-esque kind of feel. And I have a 3A style Kaneda figure. So I kind of wanted to keep with the cloth on a figure. So instead of painting the pants, and instead of making pants, because he's going to have to articulate, and usually cloth pants are going to hinder the articulation. So I thought I'd try to find a mix between the two. So I have this leftover fabric. Shout out to my good friend Mr. Nick for giving me a bunch of this fabric. And if you've seen my action figure prop shop episode where I show you how to make a couch, I use this same material because I have a bunch of it and I like this material. So I thought I'd try something a little different and actually gluing the fabric on each individual little piece. So I heated my guy up, the Yokozuna figure, and I cracked the crotch piece in the butt, and I ripped every little piece apart. I sanded it, and then just individual pieces I just started gluing this fabric on. So you can see I got a little sloppy right here. I didn't go to the edge, so you can see some black right there. Dang, this figure's got a big old butt. But you can see he keeps all his articulation, thigh swivel. You know, he goes out pretty far. And kick forward pretty far. Thigh swivel. Got double jointed knees. And I even got crafty and I put some fabric on the hinge. You can see that one's pretty sloppy. No boot rotation because it was pointless to have two articulation points. So I super glued this onto the boot. So you have that articulation. I even put the fabric on the backside. And so I can see why nobody's done this. One, because it doesn't look the best. It looks pretty wonky. I mean, it's cool. It looks cool, but it looks wonky. It looks goofy as hell. But I like it, but there's no getting around. It looks goofy as hell. And it wasn't the easiest to do. It would have been easier to sand it all down and paint it. Because the way I did it, I put a super glue, I brushed it, and you'd have to put it on quick. Because the super glue, when you do a thin layer, it's going to dry quick. And as soon as it touches the fabric, especially whatever fabric this is, it dries instantly. So I had to stretch it out and boom, put it on quick. If I didn't do it right, I'd have to peel it back, and it's, you know, super glue, so it's super hard to peel back. So you can see a couple spots are sloppy. Right here, there's a big crease, whereas this one's pretty smooth. So for the most part, you know, it's pretty clean. You can see there's some dark spots. What the dark spots is where there was too much super glue. Like you can see there's a couple dark spots. That means there's too much super glue and it bled through the fabric. So you can see there's some sloppy parts. I did a pretty good job though. Just a couple spots like right here where the fabric didn't go all the way down. But yeah, I definitely wouldn't recommend doing this. I mean, at least for pants. I mean, you might be able to work it out for something else, but for pants, it was pretty tough. Customizing for me is about experimenting, trying stuff, going outside the box. You know, you watch Craig Warwick, and he's Frankensteining 20 different figures together and holding it together with super glue. And that's just inspiring to me. Like, you can use whatever you think's going to work and just make it work with sculpt and super glue. I mean, it's, you know, that's what inspired me to do the head like that. You know, I wanted Balrog's face, but I needed a full, like, chubby face and head. So I'm like, oh, I don't want to sculpt that. Why don't I just mix them together, you know? So the legs are all complete. So this is one that's fully complete. You can see, you can articulate it. And I even put some of the fabric on the actual joint, which is kind of funny. So basically what I did is I would put some super glue, just a little bit at a time, and then brush it, and then quickly press it on. And then stretch out the fabric, put a little super glue, brush it on, push it on. And I had to do that, and then I would trim it up. And then, like, especially around the seams, I would trim it with sharp scissors. And then once I got all the fabric on, and obviously you can see I disassembled it, did one piece at a time. And then with tacky glue, I would just, with the brush, just brush the edges so it doesn't fray. Because obviously it's fabric, it's going to fray. Especially this kind of fabric. And so now I just have to assemble this leg and then glue the boots on. And I had to modify these because these are WWE Elite legs from Yokozuna. And those are Soda Street Fighter. So what I did, I cut the whole leg off. And then I dremeled it down, making my own peg. So this one and this one, I made my own peg. You can see they're not long enough to actually plug in here. But I'm super gluing them in there, so they're going to be fixed. So there's going to be no boot rotation. But you could see there's rotation right here. So he's got like mid-calf rotation. So I thought the mid-calf rotation would be good. So that way I didn't have to make like a whole boot rotate, or have to make a whole peg for the boot rotation, or like glue the peg on there. I kind of made like a compromise, so I think that's going to work out good. Because like I said, you don't need two articulation points. You got mid-calf and then boot. And I was like, you know what? I'd rather have mid-calf instead of boot articulation. One, for convenience. You know, that way I didn't have to make a complete peg to put in there or glue a peg on there or worry about it. So it's not going anywhere. I put enough super glue and it pegged in, so it's not going anywhere. So these are just Balrog's boots. They were brown at one point. I used Citadel primer, the white stuff, and then I just weathered in with pigments and some different paints, and then I painted the red lines on there. So unfortunately, I don't have a motorcycle for him yet. This is the biggest bike I have. This is the new Legendary Riders Wolverine bike. You know, I thought it might be big enough, but it doesn't look big enough. Even if I extended the handlebars to like 8 hangers and I added like the gnarly exhaust, it's still sitting way too low where this thing looks like a mini bike on him. So I'm gonna have to try to hunt down a larger bike and then customize it. So I kind of wanted to find like a mix between the two. You know, I didn't want to like model it 100% off the movie and not 100% off the manga. You know, kind of did my research and looked at a bunch of different pictures, and I kind of just found a middle ground, my own unique type design, and then 2 based off of what's going to be easier, like convenience-wise. So I tried to find a design that I like that's also going to be easy to work around. If you look at the only other figure of this character made by McFarlane, you can see that one, in my opinion, looks goofy as hell. His head looks like a big baby, and the sculpt's pretty good on it, but you know, it's outdated. I had the figure when I was a kid. Figure's hella outdated with the McFarlane cut joints, and I unfortunately don't have that figure to compare to this one. That one's long gone. And I also made some generic Clown Gang goons. These are just out of 3A parts. I sculpted on this one, and then I just kind of, you know, painted up this helmet a little bit, put the logos on it. Again, loosely based off of images from the movie. Also made this kind of cool scummy background, again loosely based off of images from the movie and graffiti from the movie that you'd see like in the backgrounds from the Clown Gang. Just something to display them in. This was actually a piece of plastic styrene, I think it's called. I found like this scrap sign and I cut them down to small pieces. I glued like these little rectangle pieces and I put rivets, and then I just weathered the hell out of it, put like random graffiti on there, just as a cool little background wall to display my new figures in front of. So hope you guys like my custom. Hope you enjoyed the video. Hope it inspired you. You can follow me on Instagram. My handle is punker_Mike. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Check out some of my other videos, and we'll see you next time. Big old bud. Oh yeah. Big old bud. Sprayed it on there. Ooh, look at that fucking blister. Oh yeah.